If you find yourself going to the phone and just going straight on Instagram, there is an addiction there. Having discipline with social media is so vital and so important.
Did you start skydiving as this like thrill-seeking adventure, or was there something deeper?
I was still struggling with this identity loss. I worked so hard to get there, but I was like the best version of like a limited self. And skydiving was kind of like a transformative event. The thoughts that come up for you when you're doing something uncomfortable are probably the thoughts that you need to observe the most, because sure, there was a series of events that happened that are tough. However, it was kind of the aftermath of the why me? Why is it that my two creators, my father and my mother, didn't want me? I was a victim of that, but I'm not a victim of what it can cause.
Before this episode starts, I've got a favor to ask of you. 85% of people who regularly watch this podcast are yet to subscribe to this channel, and 15% of those who have are yet to hit the bell notification. The bigger this platform gets, the more people we can impact and connect with, and the bigger the guests are going to get. So if I can ask you for one favor, if you've so far enjoyed this podcast, this channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn your notifications on. I'm your host, Erika, and let's dive into today's episode. All right, balancers, today's guest is a skydiver, mother, and podcast host of the Untempered podcast. She has dedicated her social media presence to raise awareness on mental health and emotional well-being. In her latest TEDx talk, which was amazing, by the way, I'll put a link in the show notes. Everyone should check it out. She shares her story on facing adversity and fear and reframing them into tools for transformation and growth, something I think we can all relate to, and something I'm very excited to chat to you further about today. Our guest is Nyla. Nyla, a warm welcome to The Balance Theory. It's so nice to have you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. I think it would be interesting for everybody to understand the context of your life in terms of what has brought you all the way to Dubai, because you've had quite some movement in early childhood, and I think that gives some important context to a lot of the things we're going to be speaking about today.
Yes, thank you, Erika. I'm super excited for this conversation. So a little bit of context would be, I was kind of forced to be an adult really young. I was born into a family that was a little bit detached and broken. They didn't have probably the tools to be able to kind of have me and raise me. So I've had to grow up and basically fend for myself. I said this and I talked about this in my podcast. When I was 15, I had to leave the country on my own and go to America. My mom said she couldn't take care of me anymore. So I was really forced to become my own parent quite early. Something that I probably really felt was a curse for the longest time, and now I know is actually a blessing, and it's made me who I am now, and to sit in front of you and talk to you. And throughout a lot of growth and a lot of ups and downs, and dealing with depression. I grew up in a family that had severe depression that ran through the family. My mom had anxiety. There was probably many undiagnosed things. So that was kind of my environment. So naturally, I was probably going to fall into that as well. But on top of that, the experiences that have happened fed into that. So I dealt with severe depression quite young, and that's kind of been what fueled me to try to transform my life and try to make something better out of it. Because to be honest, there's no other option. There is another option, and we all know what that is. And there's just so much value and beauty in being able to reframe what's happened to you and make it that it's something that happened for you. And the tools that you get from being able to change that and make it into something better and grow from it. And then now I have a 3.5-year-old daughter, and I get to impart what I've learned to her and share my wisdom. It's something that is probably the most validating thing in the world, and also makes me proud of my childhood rather than feeling like the victim.
It must be a really nice full circle moment for you to almost be the parent you wish you maybe had, or look after your daughter in the way that maybe you felt you needed growing up too. You talk about how, and this is something you shared in your TED Talk, I love this statement that adversity is a privilege. You spoke about how, when we talk about privilege, we often talk about education, social status, like things that, yes, play a part in privilege. But I love this idea that adversity is a privilege. And I've kind of had the same thoughts. Now, I have a very different backstory and kind of how I grew up, but my family, my parents, they got divorced when I was 9 and they remarried each other and then they got divorced again. So it was a very much like very constantly changing environment. And I always think about how I'm the oldest of 4, and I always think about how the 4 of us have this amazing like emotional maturity, and we're really kind of, I don't know, I think mature is the best way to say it. And I just feel like sometimes you would look at situations like that and people always feel sorry for the children and expect it to have like a really adverse effect on them. But I almost feel like because it was so tumultuous, I almost had this raised, what's the word? Like I had a raised baseline in terms of what I could tolerate or like deal with. So talk to me a little bit about how you see adversity as a privilege and how did you actually come to that reframe? Because I think it's a really powerful one.
I gotta say, I did not come into this like breakthrough moment where I was like, I have figured it all out, or it didn't just hit me. I've had to suffer, and my suffering was pretty self-inflicted. And the reason I say this is because sure, there was a series of events that happened that are tough and very tough and would, take anybody down. However, it was kind of the aftermath of the why me? Why is it that my 2 creators, my father and my mother, didn't want me? So why would that abandonment happen to me? Why was it all this way? What have I done wrong? How could I have, you almost start to take it, like when you're a kid, you don't really know. You trust these 2 people and you want them to take care of you. They're your carers. They're supposed to be your everything. And then when they let you down, it's so hard not to take that personally. So I went through some deep suffering of victimhood, and I was and let's be honest, like I was a victim of that experience, but I'm not a victim of what it can cause. So like I don't have to let it affect me in a way where I just throw my life in the bin and just do a bunch of drugs and take and just give up. I can let it be something else. And that was again a point in my life where I was like, I've done that bit. I've suffered, I've been depressed, and I've tried, to numb it and escape, but it just obviously isn't working for me because it's just getting worse. And anybody who's experienced depression would understand and would know that as much as you try to mask it, the more it's going to actually be prevalent, and long term, it's just going to get worse. And so I kind of had no other choice but to start to read and try to ask the world for answers, because I really struggled with, I didn't have any friends because we were moving like every 6 months. So I didn't have any stable friends. I wasn't really this confident person who's like, let me go make new friends. I was working a job at folding clothes at 15 in Houston, Texas. So I didn't really have this like social capacity to go and socialize and make new connections. Actually, connection was really scary for me. So when it got to the point of the lowest of the low, I think that's when it started to come to me that if I don't really step up and try to frame this differently, I am going to die. Like I am actually going to, run myself into a wall. And so I think that was kind of just a survival mode that kicked in where I was like, wait a minute, I really do love life. I want to be around. I want to meet new people and make new connections. And I don't know what my dream is. My dream is to survive right now. And how can I do this? And what happened is it started to become a step by step. And as the days go by, I started to be like, okay, maybe I can help myself in this way. Maybe I don't want to fold clothes all day. Maybe let me try to get a job at a restaurant where when people would come in, I would meet new faces and I would say hi and I'd have a little bit more human connection. So to answer your question, it really came with a bunch of experiences stacked on top of each other, along with suffering and pain. And it all was like into this Kit Kat that just was my life. And I just have to accept everything as it came. It's so amazing because now I used to really, really look back and feel sorry for myself for the tears that I've cried. And now I look back and I go, wow, that is amazing, because I could never be here if I didn't actually go through all of these things. And now if somebody is in that stuck mode and they don't know where to go except for down, then maybe I would have the tools to be able to help them. So I think that we have to think about it in a way where there really isn't any other way to do it. You have all the tools, the knowledge, resources, the books, the podcasts. Now more than ever, we live in an amazing world full of content. There are ways to be inspired and to get yourself out of that hole. It's not forever.
So when you talk about adversity being a privilege, you're kind of looking at all the things that have happened in your life, good, bad, that have kind of built this foundation on which you sit and are able to be who you are today, right? That's like how we look at adversity, and that's how you kind of came to that tagline. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, absolutely. You need what's happened for you. It didn't happen to you. You need it. And even though it sounds like shit when somebody says, you needed that car accident or you needed, this person to pass away. No, it's more about the way you think about it is whatever came from it was a lesson. And sometimes even the hardest things in life, like grief and just pain in every shape and form, it's awful. But it really, if you use it well, you can make something good out of it.
Yeah. And I think the only thing I'll add to that, which you have touched on, is, I mean, hindsight's a beautiful thing. So like actually going through it and then being able to reflect and using that as a pillar of strength is also really, really important. So you're also like a pro skydiver, which is such a cool random fact about you. I think you've done over 1,000 jumps. Did you start skydiving as this like thrill-seeking adventure, or was there something deeper that motivated you to start that journey?
I always get this question, but I love it. And I love it because every time I answer it, I look back and I learn from my answer and I go, wow. So when I first started skydiving, it was because I was still struggling with this identity loss. So even though I grew up away from my parents, I still grew up as an Arabic woman in Saudi Arabia. And I had, there was specific things that were needed of me as a kid and even just in that culture at the time. So I had this identity that I was someone. And then it started to unravel to me that I had these core beliefs of myself that were they were limiting. It was like I worked so hard to get there, but I was like the best version of like a limited self. So I'm like, I'm the best version of my limited self because I know there's more. And the way that happened was I just kind of felt like I was living life inauthentically. I was doing a lot of, at the time I was a fashion blogger, and I was kind of going with the scene and the masses and kind of trying to just jump on trends. And I'm not saying everyone else is like that, but for me, it felt inauthentic at that moment. And that was painful. I felt like, no, I did not fight for my life to be living an inauthentic life. And skydiving was kind of like an event it was like more of an event run rather than like, yeah, let's go do it. It's super fun. It was just more like a transformative event. And I thought it was going to be like a one-time thing. I'm going to do it and I'm going to go home and be like, yeah, I did it. It was amazing. But the actual experience itself ended up being more spiritual and deep than I could have ever thought. And it opened up this like realm of expansive growth, and everything that went on in my mind that day on my first jump was like, oh my God, this is the thing. These are the things that I need to work on. First of all, I'm afraid of heights. I've been telling myself that my whole life, and I was afraid, but it felt like if I could actually get on the plane, then what's to label it as a fear of heights? I'm here. I'm jumping out, you know. So it's kind of like a self-discovery thing. And as soon as I did the first jump, I was like, okay, I got to do that again, because if I can learn that much from my first experience, and how much am I going to learn from, becoming a licensed skydiver? So yeah, and then ever since, I haven't stopped.
That's amazing. Do you think that from having skydived so many times, it's helped you deal with fear in life in general? Like, do you think that has like built a muscle that helps you deal with fears in other areas of your life?
Absolutely, because the amount of discomfort still for me, because there's skydivers that have, 30,000 jumps, but for me, because I was afraid of heights and because I had never in my life would have put myself into doing that, it's still always uncomfortable. As far as just the whole entire process feels like I'm facing discomfort. So it is always a huge lesson.
I think it's interesting to think about how, sometimes we look at skydiving as this thrill-seeking thing, but I know for you it's something more meaningful. And I think it takes a lot of courage to kind of run headfirst at something that challenges everything you think you know about yourself.
Yeah.
And that, I think, that act in itself helps you kind of crack through the limitations or the limited self that you were talking about, that you feel like you were living in. So I just think it's interesting how something that you think is just like, it's just an event, how it can have such a transformative impact in your life. You've given me second reason to reconsider. I've never skydived, but I have always said maybe. Like, I've never been like, I'm never doing that in my life. It just, the opportunity hasn't presented itself. So,
well, I think about it in this way. So for me, it was an immense fear. Maybe for you, it's not a crazy fear, but maybe you do have your reservations, right? But I just think that, just think about, so like my first jump, I was so afraid and all these things. And I was thinking, what are these things that are appearing in my head? It was like somebody had written down, just brought a scroll of paper and had all my insecurities, all my intrusive thoughts, all my, you can't do this, you can't do that, what are you doing? All of the self-deprecation and everything right there. And it all came in together like with the speed of lightning. It was like lightning. I was like, oh my God, why is this all happening? But then again, that's also an opportunity, because the things that happen in your head, the thoughts that come up for you when you're doing something uncomfortable, are probably the thoughts that you need to observe the most. And for me, it was the self-deprecation, Erika. My God, like I'm still working on that, but it was like kind of like this mean voice, like Laird Hamilton said, don't let your worst enemy live between your ears, between your own ears. And that's how I was. And he was like, you can't do this. And it's like, who is this person? Oh, it's me. Why can't I do this? And I think that's why it should be kind of your push to do something uncomfortable, whether it's ice bath or if you don't like bugs, like they said in Friends, get a bug. But it's such an important opportunity to be able to learn.
It's funny you actually say the ice baths, because I was just about to say a like-for-like experience I've had is like a cold plunge. And because I've worked with a therapist and I've done a lot of psych ed with her, what's kind of coming to mind, and the reason this is happening, and how people listening can maybe draw a parallel with their own lives, is when you're in that state where you're basically in fight or flight, right? And your body is like in complete shock. Basically what it's trying to do is trying to protect you.
Yeah.
And so there's this thing with like your conscious mind and your subconscious mind. So if consciously you're like, I want to start a new business, but subconsciously you think and feel that you're not good enough. The second you start taking positive action to start that business, you may self-sabotage or get these intrusive thoughts. Now, obviously, if you've got this belief that you're afraid of heights, and then you're literally, 30,000 feet in the air about to jump out, that's like a supercharged version of that experience. And so naturally you're going to feel like a magnifying glass on what is in your subtext, what is in your subconscious, and using that as an opportunity to actually look in and see what's really there, because, it's in the subconscious because you don't know what's there.
Yeah.
But it does come out in moments like this when there's a mismatch between what you're trying to do and what you actually genuinely think and feel. It's such an interesting opportunity to just bring curiosity, and whether it be skydiving or, sometimes even you're in the gym and you just like, your mind's like, no, we're not doing another set. You're not like, just give up on the last 2 reps. Like that kind of voice is interesting to just bring a level of curiosity to.
I love that you brought that up, because it actually, you highlighted that so well. Have you ever read the book No Bad Parts?
No.
I love this book so much. It was actually recommended to me by a guest on a podcast, and I ran home and I got it, and I was like, oh my God, this is genius.
That's going to be me today. I'm going to run home and get it.
You would love it. Please do. So No Bad Parts talks about how with certain events in our lives create this part of us that comes up and it helps us cope. So if you're afraid of something, is because it happened to you before and you're afraid that's going to hurt you. So what happens is you create a defensive coping mechanism. And for example, yelling, you don't like somebody yelling, so you shut down. That shutting down is a part of you that was created when you were coping, when your parents were arguing, or whatever it is. And you need to make friends with that part of you, because you're not always going to be getting yelled at, and you're not going to be in that position to you might hear your son or your daughter scream, and instead of it triggering you and making you shut down, you know, you need to be able to deal with it in a emotionally mature way and in a patient way without a response to it and without being triggered. So the only way to do that is to connect with the subconscious, and connecting with the subconscious is forms of EMDR or hypnotherapy. I love hypnotherapy. And then you can go to these parts of you and make peace and reparent them and speak to them. And you might actually find out that they're just there because they were there before and you've not dealt with them. So they're just constantly there. So that's why I love self-reflection. And if somebody has the power to self-reflect and understand the truth about themselves, the good, the bad, the ugly, I think that is an immense power.
It is.
I want to meet that person.
Yeah. It's a superpower, and I think there's a layer of resilience that goes with it, because I think it's one of these things you can learn, but it's more a tool. It's not something you ever master, because life is a string of different things that you go through and learn. There's always going to be something you're processing, right? I feel like my whole life I'm going to be getting to know myself, and that's a beautiful thing.
So true, and I love that.
know?
Yeah.
I've done something similar with brain spotting. It's a form of EMDR, but similar kind of approach where you kind of zone in to one specific thing, and you can use it to either expand or to shrink a certain thought. For anyone that's actually listening and interested, I'll put a link to the episode I did with my therapist in the show notes, because I tried to unpack 2 years of therapy in 45 minutes with her. So that's actually a really interesting episode. If we kind of go down start talking about, I guess, your ambitions, I'd love to know if chasing success or chasing your goals has ever made you unhappy.
Yes. I love this question, because I think that we all have this core belief that we are fundamentally connected to some things that are going to create happiness. So we are if I get the promotion, I'm going to be happy. But the problem is that we have to understand, and this is something I'm talking about myself, by the way, if it's not something I'm not a shaman or a guru. I struggle with this every day. I'm talking to myself right now as well. You're connecting to things that are impermanent. And the thing is, when you make these rules and contingencies, you're binding this thing, happiness, joy, to these things, which means if they happen, okay, let's say you will be happy, but they will go away. Most of them are impermanent. And then you're just going to constantly be chasing things, and you're going to be going up and down. What we're looking for is not temporary happiness. We're looking for happiness. We want to be happy. And I did that so much in my life, where I was well, I just can't, I can't. It's all the hard work I've put in. I decided that I owe myself to just work so hard, and I'm only going to be happy when I get this. But that was also a way of a complete spiral, because I never got there. And even if I got there, it was always piling up. Okay, well, now I had this amazing podcast episode with Erika, and it did so well. I'm so happy. But then tomorrow's there as well. So tomorrow you create a new goal. And it's just it's so difficult, and connecting to these impermanent things can completely create the pathway of suffering. I think the most important thing is to be able to just go day by day. Because I think I was telling you this before the episode, I'm oh my God, I have so many things to do. My to-do list. Here's my to-do list. I'm this, and I can't plan. I'm not inherently a planner. I try try my best, but so I'm just in this world of chaos, and I want to achieve so much, and I have so many ambitions, and it just ends up in suffering. So I think taking it day by day, step by step, little crumbs of productivity have really helped. I'll do something and I'm oh my God, this was great, step by step. And even if it's becoming hard, go even, okay, I just did three questions for my podcast. I'm exhausted. Maybe today is a tough day. Maybe my daughter had a massive tantrum. Maybe I had a fight with my partner, whatever it is. It's just not a good day for me to have a 35 thing to-do list. Maybe I'll just go by the first 3, have a coffee, go for a run, come back, do another 3. It's just an element of forgiveness to yourself, because we all want so much, and it's just not healthy to kind of just go for big bites and, try to run to the finish line quickly. I think it's nice to take your time.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with this a lot, and I'm definitely guilty of it myself. Have you read the book Solve for Happy?
No.
It's an incredible book by an incredible man. His name's Mo. He basically is like an ex. I think
Oh,
he's
the Google. Yes,
Google
I have
guy.
read this book. Yeah. I love
So
him.
this
He lost his
conversation-
son, didn't
Yeah,
he? Oh, yeah.
yeah. This conversation is reminding me of the happiness equation that he formulated, and it basically says that happiness, generally speaking, is your expectation times the event happening will equal your happiness or unhappiness. So, for example, if the event is you want to go to the beach and it rains, right? Your expectation is to go to the beach, that it's not going to rain. And therefore, if it rains, you're unhappy.
Yeah.
But if you're a farmer and your plants really need a lot of water and it rains, then you're going to be happy. So he talks about how it is our expectation of things happening or not, which come back to what you were talking about with like the permanence or impermanence of things, these things that we latch onto, the if, but, when I'll be happy type situations.
Yeah.
We use that as our North Star when those things are out of our control, they're uncertain, and it's a changing constant. So I really recommend anyone who hasn't read it to read it, because he goes through these fallacies. For example, the concept of time, the concept of self, the concept of control, all these things that I actually try and read it once a year because it's just so interesting. And I feel like I take something different from it. He's also done an interview with Stephen Bartlett, which is phenomenal. It's like 2 hours, but it's worth every single minute.
Yeah.
And he talks about this concept. But still, it's something I struggle with. I have this, even when it comes to like time, right? Like by the time I'm 30, I want to do this, this, and this. Or by this time next month, I want to have these things. And more often than not, it doesn't happen that way, because that's just life. Like you can try and do as much as you can, but at the end of the day, I just feel like everything has its own time.
Yeah. Do you also feel like when you do that, is what you were told when you were a kid is like have a vision board, make goals. What are you going to do when you grow up and all that stuff? And then you do that, and then you're like, oh, it's not happening. But I also think just really having all that pressure on ourselves, and I don't know if you relate, it kind of distracts you from doing the thing. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, well, the thing is, like, for example, let's say I want to be Mel Robbins. Okay, I want to be Mel Robbins so bad. I want it so bad. And then tomorrow I'm going to wake up and I'm most likely not going to be Mel Robbins. But if I instead use that energy to not think about the bigger picture of Mel Robbins, but think about what did Mel Robbins do to become Mel Robbins? Right, let's break that down. That's probably many thousands of steps that you can take a day within tiny little things, making connections and podcasts and everything and brainstorming, whatever. There's a huge list. So if you invested that energy in kind of starting there, you'll be Mel Robbins. You might be your version of Mel Robbins because you are who you are, but still the big pressure, it's like somebody being like, I need a yacht. I'm going to look at this picture of a yacht. This is affirmations. It's like, no, like, what are you going to do to get there?
Yeah.
And that's more important than the dream. Also, I love something he said as well, Mo. He said, happiness is a choice. And, first time I ever heard that episode, I love that you mentioned it. I was like, what does he mean? Happiness is a choice. I choose to be happy, but I'm not happy. And it's like the next time I listened to it, I was like, oh, yeah, you're right. Because I don't have to feel like this. I can talk myself out of it, and I can choose to be happy in the moment.
It's like you choose what you can choose your expectation at the end of the day, and you can place your own expectation or not. But one thing I love that you spoke about that, right? The moving away from having a vision board and more just focus on the daily steps. The reason I love that, and something I've struggled with in the past, I used to be able to sit down and tell you my 5-year plan. Now I can't do it because I'm going through this rapid growth phase where every 12 months I'm leaps and bounds from the person I even thought I even knew, like in a positive way. Like I'm moving forward and I'm growing and evolving and I'm delving into different parts of myself. And that version of me kind of just has a very different vision as things go on. So what I've tried to do when it comes to like manifesting and long-term planning, like, yes, I have my goals and things I want to achieve. First of all, they are flexible in nature and they're subject to change, which I'm okay with, because I used to be like, never quit, never give up. And that used to like keep me stuck in things longer than what I needed to. But now I connect more with like my values and what kind of life do I want what values do I want my life to be surrounded by? And that's what I connect with when I'm thinking about the 5-10 year plan, not necessarily the exact picture and the exact visual and the exact car. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But for me personally, I just find that difficult to do because I'm like evolving so much.
I love that. Yeah. I do you ever feel like you evolve so much in this line of work and just in what you do, and the fact that you're also a lawyer, it's like you have so much life experience and you're going to keep evolving all the time. So it's nice to have some kind of idea, but I am a firm believer in I'm so in the moment person. Like, it's actually probably a little bit bad, but
No, I think it's great.
I'm just always like, I don't know what I'm going to want tomorrow. And I honestly feel so stressed out when I start to think about these things in like a year. Like, I don't know what I'm going to eat next week. I don't know where I want to go next week. I don't even say, like, when people say, do you want to make plans this week? I'm like, I'm free. So I definitely want to make plans, but can we not now?
Circle back on the morning.
Yeah. Let's just play it by ear where we want to go. What if we
Yeah.
wake up and we've booked bowling, but we don't want to bowl? And it drives my friends crazy, especially my English friends, because English people love being so structured. And I could learn from them and I could kind of find a good balance for sure. But I just think that keeping an open mind for evolution daily is super important.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you kind of might just stay in the same path, which life is constantly changing.
100%. I want to switch topics now to something you shared with me, something you've recently been thinking about, and that is boundaries with social media. Now, I want to preface this conversation by saying social media is an incredible tool. I mean, a lot of the line of work that you and I both do now wouldn't be around if it wasn't for social media. But there's obviously like a double-edged sword with it and its use. So do you have any boundaries that you set with your social media use?
Yes, and the algorithm doesn't like my boundaries.
Who knows what the algorithm likes?
Exactly. I think for me specifically, I'm not, I got to be completely honest with you. I am not healed. I am still in the process and the journey of healing so many things in my life. I'm going through a lot with my family and I'm trying to figure out things in the next step. What I don't like about social media is myself, about how I feel and what my relationship is with it. Social media doesn't have a gun to me and is saying you must be on your phone for 6 hours a day. There's ways that the algorithm does that when it shows me things I like. But I believe, and I wish that everybody can listen to this because I'm trying this, that having discipline with social media is so vital and so important. If I've been consuming information, my brain feels like it's going to explode because now I've watched 750 episodes. I don't know how many, I'm exaggerating, and then I've, watched animal videos, and I've also watched this, and I've also watched what's happening in Lebanon, and my brain is literally crumbling. And so whenever it comes to that point, which I shouldn't let it get to that point, but I'm not going to lie and say that I do have to take a break, and I take breaks. And like I said, then the algorithm doesn't like me. So when I post next, it's not, you don't get the same likes, whatever. But seeing as I started with fashion blogging 10 years ago, I think I kind of understand now more than ever how much that focusing on what I get from social media via likes and engagement really shouldn't dictate my life. And what I give should always be productivity or sharing my voice. So it's really how we use it. You have to find a way to stop the scrolling. I think it's probably one of the most detrimental things to our brain. When I wake up in the morning, I never go on my phone on Instagram anymore. I cannot do it. I used to do that, and I used to give myself excuses, like a drug addict. Like, I'm just inspired. I'm getting inspired. I'm learning today. I'm just going to see the latest episode or the latest this and the latest fashion and then there's also the other part of it, which is the comparison, which everybody talks about now. But let's talk about the pressure of comparison that comes from, if you have a great structure and you have a great plan for your business, right? And you're going for it, you're doing amazing, you got your guests and everything. If you keep looking at the biggest people in the world, because that's what you're going to see, people with the highest engagement, you're going to keep feeling like shit. And you'll feel unworthy because you still have the mandatory 2,000 mediocre steps, so not mediocre, but little steps that you have to do to achieve what these people have achieved. You don't know what part in their life they are at. And so comparing yourself to these people literally will actually distract you from your own work. And then you end up becoming a scrolling consumer full of thoughts and data that you don't need. And I think it's really important for people to just really know that.
Yeah. So you have a rule to not go on first thing in the morning, and any other like kind of rules you've put in place, whether it be like a specific rule or just like a general practice you try and stick to? Because again, we're not perfect.
Yeah, of course.
But just general guidelines.
Well, because I'm so in the moment, I don't have like a guideline, but I would say when I'm feeling overwhelmed, I just don't go on social media. Like, and it's really bad. Like sometimes I'll take a week or two off and I'll spend time with my daughter and I'll just recenter. I went camping with her the other day and like people were like, you've fallen off the face of the earth. We haven't seen you post in 5 days. I'm like, 5 days is nothing. Like, and you know, I'm like, that's okay. I accept that. And I just don't open the app. When I'm ready to go on it, I'm like, okay, what am I going on it? What's my purpose?
Intention.
My intention right now is to post my stuff, get that out of the way. Cause we all go through you post and then you go on the explore page and you're like, Justin Bieber and Hailey Bieber had a baby. Oh my God. And then seriously, it's a whole, but yeah. So I try to, as much as I can, have forgiveness and just don't go on it if I feel overwhelmed, or just really, really, really stay away from vital moments of the day before bed and in the morning. And if I find myself at my desk and I'm on my phone and I'm on Instagram, shut off. It's like a constant person you got to put up there, like a coach, like with a whistle. Stop it.
No, 100%. I had this similar experience like maybe 12 months ago, and I implemented a hard rule, not first thing in the morning, like until I've done my morning routine, because I've looked at that time. Like I have the whole day to go on Instagram. Like the first 2 hours I can just spend with myself. Like I can just work out how am I feeling. I can spend time like just in the gym working on my mindset, and then I can scroll the rest of the day if I really want, right? Like those first 2 days are critical for me to keep me on track.
Yeah.
Before I go to bed, equally as important. And it's so interesting. I sometimes find this with TV shows, depending on the theme or a movie. If it's something that's been like an emotionally heightened kind of experience, I can't sleep straight away. So if we're watching TV shows, it's like 8 p.m. and then I'm like, no tech before I go to bed, because I have such a high value on the quality of my sleep.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But I think what's difficult, and a lot of people listening might resonate, whether they've got a business, personal brand, just anything, like when you're posting content for work, that's when it can get a bit like, it feels overwhelming and it feels like I have to commit and do it all the time. But I'll share a quick story. Last year, the last couple of years I've been trying to grow my Instagram, and the first 2 years like really felt like a hard slog. And now I look back and I'm like, it was a very much experimentation phase. But I was like, I have to post every single day, same time, every single day. And it was like this rule I'd put on myself. And it got to a point where I was posting things with no authenticity behind it. It was just for the sake of posting. And then I remember going through this week and I was just like, no one's going to care. No one's going to be like, oh my God, Erika didn't post today. Like I'm the only one that's going to care and notice. Like literally nobody's going to, 13 people who have liked my post are not going to care. You know, like at the time, it doesn't even matter. Like 13 people, 1,300 people, 13 million, whatever it is. Like it doesn't matter. I think now for me, and I've found people to work with that align more with this approach, it's not about the quantity I'm posting, it's about the quality. I'd rather put out 3-4 posts a week that are high quality, that give people value, that are conversation starters, rather than this arbitrary rule of I have to post every day. Because when you fall into that have to kind of language, it feels very misaligned for me, because it's also quite forced. But then on the consumer side as well, intention has been so key, because I'm not going to sit here and say I don't scroll, I'm perfect, because it's not the case. Like sometimes I actually really enjoy just going, my husband and I would just do like a half-hour scroll and just, you know, it's stupid memes. Like they're so good to just have a laugh, and like it's a great way to, like, you know, there's certain memes you send to certain friends. It's just like a connection piece. Like I've got a dog chat with my siblings. Like we just love videos of like animals and stuff, you know, so I enjoy content, but it's that piece of understanding it's short form and dopamine draining, like very, very quick. So then when you stop that, if you expect to sleep straight away, it's not happening. Yeah,
so true. The lighthearted content is amazing. I think of young girls when they're just looking at other women. And I've been there. Like when I was in the modeling industry, when Instagram first started, it was still scrolling, but it was like just pictures. And it was just like, I would follow all these women that are gorgeous and stunning and, you know, taller than me or whatever it was. And there was just this insane amount of comparison that was going on. And because I follow them, more of them would come up on the explore page. I think that is really damaging. But if you're kind of like spending time because it's giving you like a lighthearted scroll with your husband, that's so cute. And I think it's nice to know that that still also can be limited and not be like a habit of going all the way down to the whatever it was. But yeah, I think it's the comparison that you feel, and like, I have to post. Do you ever feel like you become a little bit so like, let's say you have a piece of content, you're very proud of it. Do you ever feel like if you don't post it right away without seeing anything else, you start to doubt it? For example, like I'll be like, I have this amazing episode, I've done these reels and I'm posting them, and then I go on Instagram and I see other people's content, and somehow my brain will start to play tricks on me and make me doubt my own work. So in a way, like back in the day when people didn't have access to what everybody else was doing, they were doing incredible things because they didn't have any comparison. They're like, I believe in what I'm doing because it's all I see. So there's kind of an element of like, maybe also find a way to like not let it distract you from what you're doing and not believing in your own work.
So you've got a daughter.
Yeah.
And no doubt social media is not going anywhere anytime soon. Let's just say she was a bit older now, in her early teenage years. What kind of things would you be telling her? I think it's like, I mean, I'm not a parent, but I think it's one of those things where you can't not let them experience social media, but you also want to support them in a way where that's a healthy experience. But I think that is going to be quite challenging just because I haven't turned my mind to it. So I'm curious to know, like, what kind of bits of advice would you have for her?
It's a good question. I think I would help guide her into the path of finding somewhat of an identity for herself. What do you like? What do you enjoy watching? Don't just watch everybody out there doing everything. And what is it that you like? Do you like nails? Okay. Make sure that this is what you're looking at. You're looking at something that's going to help you maybe in the future be a nail artist or whatever. You like dancing, maybe you want to be a dancer, you know, whatever it is. Like, try to stay in within the realm of what you actually like and enjoy, so that at least if you are going to be on social media, that it would enhance that for you. And of course I would try as much as I can. I don't know what teenage girls are like, but I haven't gotten good reviews from my friends, but I would try to, as much as I can, instill as much clarity for her to understand that this is something that is showing you things that you then create an understanding of in your head. So for example, somebody who may look really happy, you know, might not be really happy. Somebody who might look perfect probably, you know, there's no such thing. And so I think just showing her the back end of everything and making her understand that what you are seeing is what other people choose to post after they have the control of editing it. Maybe that would kind of give her a little bit more intellect on, instead of looking and saying this is like the canvas that is what life is. I think that's very important, because we always think, oh, wow, they look so happy. They look like they're doing it. They're successful, you know. A lot of my friends go, oh, that influencer's making so much money. And I just answer and I go, how do you know? You're assuming, right? She could be 100%, but she also might not be. Like, what made you make that assumption? You were scrolling and you made an assumption that she's making a ton of money, she's super happy, she's in a great relationship. And I think that's even more toxic. So it's important to just be like, she looks like a lovely person. I'm not going to make assumptions about her that's going to make me feel less worthy.
Yeah, it's hard to do. I think it's easier to make assumptions of people online.
Yeah.
Because I think we do it naturally, right? Like you meet people, you might just see people out, etc. But online it's easier because you don't have that face-to-face kind of connection with people. But it is an important reminder, because if anybody listening, I guarantee most people listening, and I put myself in that category, I'm not posting my worst days where I'm doubting myself and, you know, I feel like I've had no productivity and I'm just having a really shit day. Like, I'm not posting that day. I'm posting my travels and the things I like, and when I've said something interesting on a podcast that I want to share. So just reminding yourself, because you also do the same thing. You only post the highlights, and that's how it is mostly used, right? Like, I know a lot of people are raw and vulnerable on the platform, and they do share kind of like the more real side to their life, which is great. But I think the majority of people don't. And I think it's impossible to capture the full scope of people's lives. Like, even if someone's happy, they're going to have shit days too.
Absolutely.
Right? So Yeah, I think instilling that is interesting, and I'm sure that's served as a nice reminder for anybody watching who gets stuck, you know, comparing. One thing I've recently done, but don't do it this way because I got myself in a bit of trouble. I actually on Sunday night went to just like unfollow a whole bunch of accounts, just like
I've done that.
people I followed, like when I first got on Instagram, fashion brands that I just don't, you know, I just went through a massive detox, but I got like banned, like from taking any action on Instagram because it flagged it as like spammy behavior.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It was only like 300 unfollows or something. Maybe that's a lot. I don't know. But anyway,
I've done that before.
I can't like or do anything for a week. So don't
Oh
do
my
it all in
God.
one go. Just do it in like little batches or as you see content. If it doesn't make you feel good, just unfollow.
This is so true.
You know?
And it brings you back to like when you see that girl that bullied you in high school that you used
Just
to follow
unfollow
because
her.
at the time you're like curious about what's going on in her life and now you don't give a shit.
Yeah.
It's like just looking at her is going to bring you back to this moment. Like people, I don't know if people understand the power of the brain. Like when you look at something, it really does bring back the emotions and the feelings that you felt when you met that person or whatever. Or even just make an assumption out of them. You are feeling those feelings. It's changing your dopamine levels. Everything in your brain is changing as you're looking through thousands or hundreds of pictures, whatever it is. So I love that you said that. I think like, just don't give social media too much power over you. It shouldn't have power over you. If you find yourself going to the phone and just going straight on Instagram, there is an addiction there. And that's fine because it's all about realizing it, right? And then that's when you learn to try and stop. It's really scary, but I hope that I can try to at least make the rule for my daughter that she doesn't have a phone until she's at least 15 or 16. And I think that would be really nice to just not kind of have that, be in touch with the entire rest of the world at that young age, because you really do want to form your identity. So we'll see how that goes. I'll let you know.
We'll circle back in a decade.
We'll circle back in a decade.
Yeah, no, 100%. Nyla, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I feel like the time's just flown.
It has. Oh my God.
But I really enjoyed getting to know you and
you
just sharing bits of your life story and wisdom. So thank you so much for coming on the show. And if people want to connect with you, where's the best place they can go? And I'll put some links in the show notes.
Thank you so much for having me. This was an awesome conversation. And you should be very proud of yourself. I love the balance theory, and I'm going to be binging on your episodes tonight. So my podcast is Untempered Podcast. So please follow it and check out season 3 is going to be coming soon.
Exciting. Well, I'll put links to it below. Thank you so much for coming on, and I'm looking forward to also binging your show too.
Thank you, Erika. I appreciate it.
Thank you.